Hey guys, just real quick, I'm going to go over my burst for Fire Mage. I don't really have a full Fire Mage guide because, like, even this guy isn't geared for Fire. He's more geared for Arcane and Frost. Um, but the burst, I'm just going to go over the burst that I actually learned from commenters, Andre Oliveira and Ravager48. So I really appreciate it, guys. I've had a lot of fun with the burst that you guys told me about. And for the spec for it, I'm running Prismatic Crystal and Cold Snap. And then Blast Wave, as usual. Those are basically the three main things you need for the burst. You don't really need Blast Wave, but it's highly recommended. But you definitely need Cold Snap, because what Cold Snap will do, it'll give you a second Dragon's Breath. And Dragon's Breath, with the way I'm set up, is my most powerful spell. Even without me using like my trinkets and stuff, it can still hit like 60k crits. And then Prismatic Crystal, obviously, just to spread out the damage. And then the glyph you're going to need is the Glyph of Dragon's Breath, which increases damage done by Dragon's Breath by 100%. So I'm right up. I know these target dummies don't have armor and stuff, but I'll just show you the damage of my Dragon's Breath. I don't know if it'll crit, but 59k crit Dragon's Breath. Without that glyph, it would obviously be like 30k maybe. So I'm just going to go over the steps on the rotation of the burst, and then that's pretty much it, because like I said, I don't really have a full guide on Fire Mage. I've only came back to Fire for like the past like 4 times I've logged in. Ever since I basically went back, I was starting to go Frost just to be able to cap my Mage out, because my Mage is kind of like my fallback tune after I get bored with my Warrior. So ever since I learned about this burst, I've basically stuck him Fire, and this is like my 3rd or 4th time logging him with this burst, so I couldn't really tell you how to do a full-length guide. The other thing I'm running personally just to do more damage is Incanter's Flow, if I can speak. Incanter's Flow can increase your damage by up to 20%, and I have a add-on that will show me when it gets to above 4. This little word that says power right there underneath my character. When it goes to a stack of 4 and 5, it'll show up, and then once it goes below that, it'll go away, and I know not to do that. So that's basically my bursting point, is when I can focus enough to see that power buff. So I'm going to tell you about the burst before I actually do it, because it kind of goes a little fast, because you got to make sure you beat the crystal. You want to CC him anyway. If it's the beginning of a fight, you can use Polymorph. I only Polymorph at the beginning of a fight because the dots will break it, and I don't want to use the glyph that takes that away. So I might Poly, or I'll Frost Gel him, or if you're using one of the Ring of Frost, that you can use that too. But you just get him to stand still enough, or if you're running with a partner that can stun, that's always really nice. Just a way to keep him still and try to keep him alone. But my damage does enough damage where I can almost like take out 2 people at once. You'll see later on, I'll have some clips. But so you'll want to get them still or whatever. Pop your burst, which for me is literally only my trinket. So I'd pop my trinket, throw down my crystal, Dragon's Breath, Cold Snap, Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave, and then I usually just hit Inferno Blast just to try to get a little bit extra damage, because they're usually like within like killing blow range. The thing about Dragon's Breath and the crystal is the dragons, like, you throw the crystal down and the crystal it spreads out the damage. Dragon's Breath doesn't actually have a target, it hits everything. So when you Dragon's Breath, you can hit them for like 60k, and then you'll hit the crystal and it can do another 60k. So you could do like 120k with like one Dragon's Breath. So definitely you're gonna want, I think if I was gonna tell you about stats for Fire Mage, I'd run Intellect, Crit, and any type of spell power that you can do. I'm stacked high in Mastery, which isn't that great for Fire. Fire's Mastery is not that great, but yeah, crit is definitely one of your biggest stats. I will now just to show you, I guess. I know I suck with talking, so I do Trinket, Crystal, Dragon's Breath, Cold Snap, Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave, and then Inferno Blast. And if you want to cast other things, because the crystal doesn't usually it'll still be there for a while, but usually by that time people are running away from the crystal if they're not dead. So I usually don't try to cast, I usually just do that to try to kill them really fast. I didn't actually wait for my Incanter's Flow on that one, but Incanter's Flow can usually add like a good 10k to your damage minimum. But obviously, if you're spec better and stuff like that, you can do more damage. But this is a really nice burst, and I know people are going to be like, "Oh, that's stupid OP, blah blah blah." But the one thing you have to understand is it's a hard-hitting burst, but it's really hard to actually hit. Because anybody with an invulnerability, like if you're going to Pally, I've gone against multiple Pallies that I'll get them right down to that like last little hit, and then they bubble and it's pointless. And then they can just heal most of the way back up, and then I have to go without a burst for a while. And when you're running Cold Snap is a 3-minute cooldown, so you're basically running a 3-minute full burst if you want both Dragon's Breath. Obviously, you only have to wait a minute and a half for crystals, so you can Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave, which still does quite a bit of damage, but it's not technically the full burst. That, and if you want to wait till you have to like go in, fight a little bit, lower their health, then Ice Block, then get out of it, then burst, that way you get a second Ice Block, you could do that too. I usually don't do that a lot. I'm usually just try to kill it as quick as I can and go. Blink is the other reason why it's obviously hard to hit, because you can just get away from it. But blinks and invulnerabilities, if I see somebody with those, I usually try not to go for them for that reason, unless they've already wasted it. If I'm the target, it's fine, because if there's a melee attacking me, I can just throw the crystal at my feet, because they're not going to be expecting me to, they're going to expect me to try to run. Whereas if I get charged by a warrior, I can just pop my burst, throw my crystal down, Dragon's Breath. Next thing you know, he's running away from me because he wants to live. And I'm just like, if anything, I run Time Warp, so the minute he charges me, I'll just Time Warp, burst, blah blah blah, and then right after the burst, or if I need to, I can Time Warp and go right back to full health and be like, "You were saying? Bring it on." Range, like hunters and stuff, are a little bit harder because they're usually casters or obviously hunters. So they run around as it is. So you really gotta either have a stun or a good CC that'll hold them still, because most things you can't. A lot of people, like deter and stuff, you can't use while you're in, like being affected by Dragon's Breath, the incapacitate. So you just kind of do both of those, which are your hard hitters, and they basically have to sit there and take all the damage. And then after that, when it breaks, that's when they'll deter and try to get away. It's all about just learning. Running Crystal is pretty stressful, because if you miss your Crystal, you miss your burst. Like, I can still do good damage without the Crystal, but it's nowhere near as much, because the Crystal adds, like, for your 2 Dragon's Breath, for each Dragon's Breath, you'll hit them once. So you got 2 Dragon's Breath hits without the Crystal. If you have the Crystal, it adds an extra 2 hits. And if those crit, it's game over. When I crit, I destroy people. When I don't crit, it brings them down to about 25% health. And I'm just like, alright, I need my partner to help me damage. Help, help. Kill it quick before he gets back up or gets away. And then obviously, like, things like Cloak for rogues are kind of a pain in the ass. DKs with their bubble. You basically want to, like, if you go against a DK or rogue, you want to wait, try to survive out their cloak or their magic bubble, and then burst them, because I went against DK earlier, and he popped his magic bubble, and it took away, like, it took one of my Dragon's Breath to destroy it, which took away a good chunk of my burst. But now that I've realized I've been talking for 10 minutes, I'm going to crop the hell out of this, hopefully. And yeah, so I hope this guys help you with the burst. I thank you guys for showing me this burst, and now I will just leave you with clips of me capping and doing more fire stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy.